Hi, I'm Effie. This is What Effie Reads, and today I'm going to be doing a book haul of all of the books that I've added to my collection in the last few months. This video is going to be split into 5 sections: pre-orders, gifted, books that I bought for the Queer Picture Book Club, books that I received in subscription boxes, and the final section is books that I've bought for myself. I am in theory meant to be on a book buying ban, but I'm going to blame it on Scion, whose channel is Head in the Books, linked in the description, as she is my favourite bad influence. And when she reached 20 points in her TBR game, she was able to get a book haul. Keep your eyes out for that, coming very soon, I hope. And I came along with her, and I might have gotten quite a few books at the same time. I'm going to start off with the pre-orders, which is one of the smaller sections. These are in no particular order, they're just how I picked them off my shelves. So we've got With This Kiss by Carrie Hope Fletcher. What I remember of this book, I will say up front, most of the books in this video I haven't managed to read yet. So this is just going to be my interpretation based on blurbs. So what I think this is about is a girl or woman who, when she kisses someone, she's able to see how they're going to die, and she's not sure if that's premonition or the act of her kissing this person is what brings about their death. As might be predicted, she ends up falling for someone. I think that's what it's about. Again, this might be a really bad interpretation, and this is the Watson's exclusive edition, so it's got these really pretty sprayed edges, and it's also signed. Next up, we've got Gallant by Schwab. And again, this is the Watson's exclusive edition, so it's got these stenciled edges. In this book, we meet Olivia Pryor, a non-verbal 16-year-old who has kind of grown up not knowing her parents. The only thing she had of her parents was her mother's journal that seemed to descend further and further into madness as it went on. And the final page was a very cryptic letter that seemed to be for Olivia saying, "You'll be fine, the ghouls can't hurt you, and whatever you do, never ever go to Gallant." And then she receives a letter inviting her to Gallant. As I say, this is the Watson's edition. It is signed, and I met V. Schwab, so it's also dedicated. Oh dear. The next pre-ordered book I've got is Cirque du Freak Omnibus Edition Volume 6. This is the final edition of the manga adaptation of the Saga of Darren Shan, which I've been told was published in the US under the series title of Cirque du Freak. So in the UK it was the Saga of Darren Shan, in America it was Cirque du Freak, and the manga is Cirque du Freak. And I'm so happy to have completed my collection of these manga. I am making my way through them very slowly, as I'm currently doing a reread of the Saga of Darren Shan. I'm reading one book every month, and because these cover 2 books, every 3rd month I'm reading one of these. So I'll be reading this, I think, in the latter half of 2023. But I'm just happy to have my collection complete, and I know that manga can be a bit difficult to get your hands on, so I pre-ordered this to make sure I actually had a copy. And the final book that I've got for the pre-order section is Yinka, Where's Your Husband by Lizzie Damalola Blackburn. This is a book completely seeped in Nigerian diaspora, where our protagonist has to find a husband, or at least a date for someone's wedding. I'm not sure who the person is in relationship to our protagonist, but she needs to find a date before a wedding, otherwise the aunties will be nagging her saying, Yinka, where's your husband? I'm really looking forward to it. I've been enjoying books that quite heavily feature the Nigerian diaspora recently. I really, really recommend Honey and Spice, which is not out yet, but highly recommend Honey and Spice if you're looking for that diaspora feel. It's not just the Nigerian diaspora. I know there's also Ghanaian. This talks about Jollof Wars. That's not this book, just to say that it's Honey and Spice. But I imagine this will also have a lot of the similar feels, and I'm looking forward to it. And this is the books that I bought for the Queer Picture Book Club, which is the monthly book club run by the amazing Spoops of Spoopy Hall. Every month we read a queer graphic novel or manga, and I just really enjoy the community. And when I first went on a book buying ban, which I'm doing terribly at, by the way, they were one of the exceptions. I was allowed to buy the book for this book club every month because I knew that I was reading it. So we've got a Not So Lonely Travel Planet Guide. That's not right. We've got a Not So Lonely Planet Travel Guide, Volume 1 by Monet Sarai. This follows two guys who agree to go on a round the world trip before they get married. It's really sweet and gives you complete wanderlust. The next one we've got is Chef's Kiss by Jarrett Melendez. This was actually one of the books on my most anticipated list for this year, so I was so happy when this was picked as the April, I think. No, May. I was so happy when this was picked as the May book club pick because it gave me an excuse to buy it. And this follows a guy who's recently graduated from college and he's looking for a job, not having much joy, when he sees a help wanted, no experience required sign in a restaurant and goes for it, and cuteness ensues, complete with this adorable pig, which I think is called Wilbur, if I remember rightly. It was so cute and definitely lived up to the hype that I'd created for it in my head as one of my most anticipated. And the final one for this quarter is Bloom, which I haven't read yet. And this is by Kevin Panetta and Savanna Ganucheau. I'm not 100% sure. As I say, I haven't read this one yet. I don't actually know very much about it, but it's got French flaps, which I'm quite a sucker for. I think they're a cute thing on books. What I will say is when I picked this up, the bookseller said it sounded like Heartstopper. I'm not sure if that's because it's a queer graphic novel or if it is going to give you all those cute Heartstoppery vibes. So I'm very looking forward to getting into this, and I will be reading it this month as it is the June pick. The next section that we've got is books that have been gifted to me. Again, these are in no particular order. They're just how I've happened to pull them off my shelves today. So first up, we've got Scary Monsters by Michelle de Cresta. This was gifted to me by one of my in-person friends, real life friends, whatever you want to call them. And I'm really intrigued by this. So it, as you can see, it's right way up like this, and it's got a gentleman on the cover, and then you flip it over and it's right way like this, and it's got a woman on the cover. So it seems to be a book. Well, it seems to be a book in two halves, where you've got narratives that kind of cross over and interlink. So half the book's written one way round, half the book's written the other way round. I'm not sure how I'm going to respond to it. I know that Only Revolutions had a similar concept, although for that you had to keep flipping the book every 8 pages. Whereas this, I think you read like one through narrative, then the other through narrative. But I guess I'll see when I get stuck into it. But it sounds absolutely fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to cracking it open. The next book I've got is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. I've heard a variety of things about this. What I have heard, though, is that it's very challenging, and I am interested to get into it, but I think it's one that I'm going to have to be in the right frame of mind to read. It puts its own spin on the idea of one half of the population being afflicted by a deadly virus or whatever. And in this one, it actually doesn't forget that trans people exist. I believe there's something about... Now, I'm so sorry if I get this completely wrong, but I think trans women need to eat the testicles of men to survive. I could be getting this completely, as I say, I could be getting this completely wrong. I also know that there's a really cathartic scene involving various TERFs, but as I say, I know it's like so challenging. I will link Kevy's review in the description because she's done an absolutely brilliant job of breaking down about this book, and I know more going into this book than I normally would because Kevy's review made me want to know more. And I do plan on doing a reading vlog on it at some point, but as I say, I think I need to be in the right frame of mind to read it. And this was gifted to me by Michelle as part of Spoops Easter gift exchange. Spoops does quite a few gift exchanges, basically any excuse to have a gift exchange, and we love it. So thank you to Michelle for getting me this. I think she also got me another book, which we'll come to later. The next book we've got is Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone by Diana Gabaldon. This is book 9 in the Outlander series. I started this series at the start of this year, and this will be the last book that I need to read. It is an ongoing series, so I'm a bit nervous about picking it up. I think I heard that it ends on a cliffhanger, which makes me even more nervous to pick it up. I also know that this series has been going on for about 30 years, so I don't know when we'll get the next book. I have been really enjoying it. Obviously, book 9 is quite a distance away from where this series started. But basically, we've got a young nurse called Claire who has just come back from the Second World War, I think. And she is transported back 200 years to Highland, Scotland, where she meets the dashing Jamie and romance ensues. It's a really captivating story, and it's one that you can completely and utterly get lost in, and obviously very chunky. So yeah, I've been really loving this series, and this was gifted to me by the fantastic Scion, who is absolutely the sweetest. Like, she literally went into a shop, saw that they had this, I was like, right, I'm going to get that for Seffi. Just the sweetest. I love her pieces. The next book that I've got is I Hear the Sunspot Limit 1. This is book 3, I think. I really hope it's book 3. This is book 3 in the series, and it follows a young deaf man and a man who just loves his food as they form a friendship where the guy who loves his food helps the deaf man with transcription in class in exchange for food, and is really sweet, really wholesome. And I've heard from some deaf people that they feel like the representation is really good in this book. And I'm not quite sure why I've been doing it this way, but basically I've just been very slowly acquiring each volume through gifting. I think the other volume of this series that I've got was also gifted. And this one was gifted to me by Melissa as part of, once again, one of Spoops' gift exchanges. This one was the gift exchange for Pride. These next 2 books, I guess they're kind of a late Christmas present, but I love them. I love this series. And we've got Across the Green Grass Fields and Where the Drowned Girls Go, both by Sean and McGuire. These are Wayward Children books 6 and 7, which are portal fantasies where children who feel kind of outsiders in their own world find worlds that are much more attuned to the people that they are, and they go on adventures. And it's also dealing with what happens when they come back. This was the first Wayward Children book that I gave 5 stars. I just loved it so much. And funny enough, this was the very first Wayward Children book I read. The great thing about this series is you can pick them up anywhere. I do think that you get more from them in terms of Easter eggs and whatever if you do start Every Heart a Doorway, which is book 1, but 100% you can pick up anywhere in the series. As I say, I started with book 6 and then I went back and read books 1 to 5. And I absolutely adored this. It was so sweet. And this one has an intersex protagonist, which I feel like we don't get many books with that queer rep in it. Like, it's very easy for a book to have like MLM rep or sapphic rep, but you don't get much of the I in LGBTQIA. And then the last book I have been gifted during these last few months, also by Michelle, and also as part of Spoops' Easter gift exchange, is Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. I know literally nothing about this book, but I've been wanting to pick up some Akwaeke Emezi, and I think I really should at this point because I've got Freshwater, Pet, and You Made a Fool Out of Death with Your Beauty. And I'm also really intrigued by their other works as well. As you may be able to tell by this massive stack, we're now getting into the sections where I've got quite a few books to go through. This section is going to be books that I got in subscription boxes, so feel free to skip if you haven't received all of your books for the last 3 months. So this will be like up until the end of May subscription boxes, if that makes sense. So let's just crack into it. So we've got The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie. I think this is a... I'm going to say up front that for a lot of these books, I don't 100% know the blurb, I think this one is about a girl who sacrifices herself because someone she cares about is going to be sacrificed. Oh my gosh. In this book, we've got a vengeful sea god who is believed needs sacrifices each year. I'm not sure if it's each year, but needs sacrifices regularly to appease him, and our protagonist decides to kind of sacrifice herself so that her brother's beloved doesn't have to be sacrificed. Then we've got We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman. I don't even know how to describe it. It features an underground fight club. I think it's got an unlikable protagonist. It's talking about how like she makes enemies of people. I'm doing a really bad job of describing these. All of the books will be all of the titles will be in the description, so if you want to find out more about these, please check them out, because as I say, I'm not doing a brilliant job of describing them. But I know it's queer because it came in the queer book box, and it's very brightly coloured. Wow. Then we've got An Arrow to the Moon by Emily XR Pan. I think this has been described as it's a reinterpretation of Romeo and Juliet filled with romance, magic, and Chinese mythology. Quite frankly, that's all I really need to know. I do love these sprayed edges though. That's such a lovely colour. It's a bit chunky though, chunkier than I normally pick up. But I'm very intrigued to try it out. Next up, we've got The Magnificent Sons, which seems to be a story of two brothers, one who is out and proud and gay, and one who's just coming to terms with his bisexuality. I think this is one that will probably resonate with a lot of people. I technically picked up a copy of this last year because I managed to get it for like £2 on Amazon, but then it came in one of the queer book boxes this year, so I've subsequently gifted my second copy. But I'm very intrigued to read this. I think queer stories where people are coming to terms with their queerness later in life is definitely something that resonates with like my generation and older. As much as I love things like Heartstopper, where younger generations are able to embrace their queerness at a younger age, it's not everyone's able to do that. Next up, we've got Blood Scion by Deborah Falaye. This follows a descendant of Orisha gods with fantastic powers who is conscripted into an army at 15. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it, as martial fantasy is not my favourite, but I do love Afro fantasy. So I'm keeping a very open mind to it. I think it is on my TBR for the month of June, so I will be picking it up regardless. And the audiobook is on Scribd. But I really like the colour combination of this book. I think the pink and blue works really well. And I am hoping to love it. And you never know. Next up, we've got Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This is, I think it's a heist novel where a group of Chinese American students are tasked with stealing back portraits and whatnot that have been stolen from China. Next up, we have Gallant. This is the Aloma Crate edition. I'm not going to do another blurb as this is my second edition of it. I do like these sprayed edges. I wish they were a bit more centered. But yeah, another pretty edition. And probably my favourite author. Schwab is an absolutely lovely person, so I'm not mad that I have multiple copies of this. And now we're getting into my most recent book box ones. So these were all in my most recent unboxing. But we've got The Whale Tattoo by John Ransom. For some reason I thought it focused around a whale that washes up on a beach haunting this guy, but the blurb doesn't tell me that. I think I just took that away from when I originally read the blurb, but it's it does have a whale washing up on a beach, but I don't think he talks to him, so I don't know why I thought that was the case. It's got one of those literary fiction blurbs that you can't actually tell what the book's about, but it was on my most anticipated list, so I'm very much excited to get into it very soon, hopefully. Next up, we've got The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. I know nothing about this. Reading the blurb, this sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. It's got a young woman who has a djinn bodyguard who kind of steals and trades in illegal magic. One day she gets caught and tasked to steal something for the Sultan, and there is a quest involved. I definitely think that the cover feels like it doesn't do justice to the blurb, but maybe it's just that the end papers, which are kind of more cartoony, give a very different tone than the cover. Next up, we've got The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. This is a murder mystery after a famous cartographer is found murdered, but there's also what seems to be a conspiracy where a seemingly worthless mass-produced map is now being hunted down and every copy destroyed. So there's lots of secrets and deceit to be uncovered. Next up, we've got The Empty Room by Brian McGilloway. After the disappearance of her daughter, Dora has a very disinterested husband, which obviously seems really strange because it's his daughter that's gone missing. And there seems to be a domestic thriller aspect where Dora has to kind of rip apart her marriage and expose all the cracks to try and find out what's happened to her daughter. Next up, we've got Book of Night by Holly Black. I don't know much about it except it's been getting lots of really bad reviews. I think I potentially wouldn't have picked it up for myself, but I'm almost definitely going to read it because I own a copy. I haven't read any Holly Black before, so I don't know if I'm going to gel with the writing style. But recently I heard something about The Cruel Prince that made me intrigued to try it, so I'm also more intrigued to pick this up. Next up, we've got Bad for Good by Graham Bartlett. From the blurb, it seems to be a fairly standard police procedural where an upcoming footballer is murdered and that footballer happens to be the son of a police officer, so it makes for a really tangled, complicated case. I'm not usually a fan of police procedurals. I think because I've got this copy, I will be giving it a try, but I don't know if I'm going to love it or not. And the final book that I've got for this section of the video is You Made a Fool Out of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. I don't know anything about this. I don't know very much about this beyond the fact that it was featured in an Afterlight box, so I think it's a contemporary romance. The blurb leaves it very vague, where our protagonist is offered an island escape holiday and she might just be ready to open her heart up to someone. But regardless, I'm very excited to try it out. It is one that I'm not sure it made my anticipated list, but it is one that I was interested to pick up because even the title intrigues me, and I think, as I said earlier in the video, I do want to pick up some Akwaeke Emezi. As you can see, I'm becoming a little bit crowded by books as I now have all of my book haul in front of me. And we are on to, thankfully, the final section of the video. And this should have been a very small section because I'm meant to run a book buying ban. And I'm meant to only allow myself one book a month, like, plus whatever the Queer Picture Book Club pick is. But I didn't quite work out like that. So let's get into this massive pile of books. These are still the subscription books, so ignore them. So first up, we've got Perfect Match by Jodie Picoult. I don't know too much about it, but the blurb talks about a 5-year-old who has been essayed, so it sounds like it's going to be a really difficult read and really challenging. But the fact that this 5-year-old is a man, which I feel like we don't get much representation of essay of men, I think was what made me pick it up. I'm going to group the next 3 books together because when I bought them, I thought they were one series and I was so happy with myself, but they're very much not. They are The Blade Itself, Last Argument of Kings, and Best Served Cold, all by Joe Abercrombie. I think because they're all kind of within the same colour palette, I thought it was a complete series, but like putting them together, I can see they are now like from 2 different series. I'm a bit mad because I think I'm missing the middle book in, is it the First Law trilogy? The one that starts with The Blade Itself. But they were only, I think, £1 each, so I was still pretty happy with them. I don't know very much about them other than they're grimdark and people really rate Abercrombie's work, so I shall look forward to picking them up and going in not knowing very much. Next up, we've got Rumesa Ever After, which is the sequel to Rumesa. I didn't know there was a sequel, but I knew I wanted to pick it up because I really enjoyed Rumesa. And it's nice and short, it's middle grade, so it should be quite quick and easy to read. And it's always nice to see fairy tales with more representation in them. Next up, we've got When Our Worlds Collided by Daniel Jawada. I'm not 100% sure. The only reason I picked this up was because, as you can see, this was buy one get one half price. So I wanted to take advantage of that deal. I had such a struggle picking out a book I wanted, but in the end I went for this. I think it takes place in London. I'm not sure why I thought it takes place in London, but I think it does. Oh, I think because it's a stabbing. That sounds really bad. Basically, a group of friends witness a stabbing outside of a shopping centre, and it explores how their lives are impacted by that. Yeah, I genuinely have no idea why I think it takes place in London, but I'm pretty sure it takes place in the UK, like from the phraseology, the fact it's called a shopping centre and the fact it's a stabbing as opposed to involving guns, but I'm ready to be proven wrong. I guess we'll see. And then I picked up I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. This is McQuiston's YA debut. Previously, the books were adult, and this one follows the disappearance of a prospective prom queen after she kisses our protagonist, I think. Primarily the reason I picked it up is because it was in Waterstones several days before it actually officially came out. And I love that feeling of when you go into Waterstones and you're like, this book isn't out yet, but I can get it now. It's such a silly thing, but it must work so well for them when they put out books early because people want to get them early. I'm hoping to pick this up pretty soon because I do like McQuiston's writing. I'm not sure that their writing is quite 5 stars for me, but I enjoy what they write, and queer stories are things that I tend to gravitate towards anyway. The next one we've got is Skipby volumes 4, 5 and 6. So this is the second omnibus edition. This follows a young girl who basically dropped everything to help her best friend, and then her best friend kind of disregarded her. So she decides to get into showbiz and become even more famous than him and show him just where he went wrong. I know it's a slow burn, and the first volume, again, omnibus, was really different because it included like random commentary from the author throughout. But I did enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Protag gets with the love interest, because I think it takes a long time for them to get there. But obviously, once they're there, you're just so excited that it's finally happened. I'm gonna group the next 4 together as well. So we've got Our Dark Duet, This Savage Song, The Dark Vault, and Everyday Angel, all by the Schwab. I picked these up whilst I was at a Schwab event way back in March. Gosh, that feels like an eternity ago. Because Schwab had signed literally every copy of their book that Toppings had, and these were the last 4 that I thought I needed. I've since realised that Schwab has written a couple of other books that are less talked about. So I haven't quite finished my collection, but these are all the ones that you hear about more often. Next up, we've got Blood to Poison by Mary Watson. This is a book steeped in the author's South African heritage. And in this family, one woman in every generation is destined to die young. This is a curse that has been passed through their lives all the way from their ancestor Hela, and in the months before they die young, they are filled with just so much anger at all of the misogyny that they see behind them. It's a book that I kind of had my eye on for a while. Once again, you can see the buy one get one half price sticker. That was kind of why I picked it up, but I'd been intrigued by it the previous time I was in Waterstones, so I just gave myself permission to buy it. And when I did buy it, the bookseller said it's really good. So I'm looking forward to picking this up and just hopefully adoring it. Next up, we've got The Woman in the Purple Skirt by Natsuko Imamura. This is quite a small book, and it sounds like it's going to be quite creepy. I'll just read out the blurb because it's pretty short. It says, "The woman in the purple skirt is being watched. Someone is following her, always perched just out of sight, monitoring which buses she takes, what she eats, whom she speaks to. But this invisible observer isn't a stalker. It's much more complicated than that." So I'm just so fascinated with what's going on in this book. And like I say, it's very short. The font is like relatively large as well, and there's quite large margins. So I think it'd be quite a quick read. And then we've got All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. This has been on my list for a while. So when I saw it in a charity shop for £1, I kind of took it as a sign that I was meant to pick it up. I'm not sure what to make of the blurb, but it seems to be a kind of love story between a scientist and a witch, but possibly it's just a fantasy. Possibly it's just kind of best friends reconnecting. I think it'll be interesting to see the way that science and magic overlaps and works together in this book, basically. This next book I picked up because the author's going to be at YALC, and I did this thing where I thought, oh, I can read all of these books before YALC. I'm not going to get to probably half of these books, but this one is Lockwood & Co. The Screaming Staircase. I think this is the first book in the series. I really hope it's the first book. The blurb reads like a Victorian fantasy type book. Also, look how floppy it is. Like, even if I wasn't going to YALC, I've heard good things about this book, and I do like a floppy book. Like, if a book's floppy, I'll probably pick it up if I'm even vaguely intrigued in it. It does sound like it's going to have like very light spook to it. There's talks of ghouls and psychics. Hopefully I'll get a chance to read it before YALC, but I do have an awful lot of books. Just in general, but also I think I've got more books by YALC authors than I realise. Next up we've got Straight Outta Crawley by Ramesh Ranganathan. I picked this up because it was like 5 books for £1 at the charity shop, and I kind of wanted to try and make it up to £1. I'm not sure if I did pick 5 books, but it was still £1 for however many I picked up. I don't know. I really enjoy Ramesh's comedy, so I'm kind of looking forward to reading this memoir, even though I don't read very many memoirs. But hopefully it'll be really interesting and quite funny. I guess we'll see when I eventually pick it up. The next 4 books I also got on my kick of, I'm going to buy all these YALC books, even though I probably won't be able to finish them before I go to YALC. So they're not in the correct order, but we've got Skullduggery, Pleasant Mortal Coil, Skullduggery, Pleasant Playing with Fire, Skullduggery, Pleasant, The Faceless Ones, and Skullduggery, Pleasant, and Skullduggery, Pleasant, Deathbringer. As I say, I think I just got really optimistic in thinking I would be able to read them all before YALC, but Spoops speaks so highly of the Skullduggery Pleasant books, I had to pick them up. And I'm pretty sure, although I could be wrong, that they are one of her host fave books for Whatever-a-thon. So I was like, oh, I can read them during Whatever-a-thon. I'm not sure if I actually will, but I now own 5 of the first 6 books in the series. I think I'm missing book 4, so I might have to pick that up if I actually get through the other books. I don't know. I kind of lost my mind. As I say, Scion is like my favourite worst influence. And then we've got The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I don't know. I feel a little bit ashamed that I've never read this book, and in fact, this edition, despite being from a charity shop, is in pristine condition. Like, this spine is not cracked at all. And it's a really stiff one, so I think it's probably impossible to read without cracking the spine. This was one of the first, like, hype books that was like, oh, it's so hyped, I don't want to pick it up. So I've never read it, but I know people absolutely adore it and think it is amazing. And I'm pretty sure it's got autistic rep. So it'll be interesting to see how autism is depicted in this book. But I'm still a little bit nervous because the hype was so high when it first came out that I really don't know what I'm going to think of it. And then I think we finally made it to the bottom of the pile, and we've got The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. I saw this book on Beth over Booksnest TBR, and it sounded really interesting to me. So I put it on my wish list, and then I found it for, I think, £1 in a charity shop, and I just had to have it. Again, the blurb's quite short, so I'll just read out the blurb. It says, late one night, exploring her father's library, a young woman finds an ancient book and a cache of yellowing letters addressed ominously to my dear and unfortunate successor. Her discovery plunges her into a world she never dreamed of, a labyrinth where the secrets of her father's past and her mother's mysterious fate connect to an evil hidden in the depths of history. So it sounds really intriguing just from that blurb. It is very chunky, but also it's got a beautiful level of flop. I am absolutely obsessed with flop in my books. But yeah, hopefully I'll get a chance to pick this up soon. And we are finally at the end of my book haul. I feel like I've got a shameful amount of books in the past few months. Hopefully I can kind of pare back on the amount of books that I'm buying. I don't think I've got many more pre-orders still to come, but I do want to put in at least one more pre-order this year because there are a few books that I'm pretty excited to come out. Let me know your thoughts on any of the books that I've hauled in this video. Please keep it spoiler free because, as I say, most of these books I haven't read, and I also don't want you spoiling it for anyone else. And let me know how many books you have hauled in the past few months. And now I need to try and put these all back on my bookshelves. So until next time, bye.
There's a place